Thank you, Chris. All right, thanks. Wow, what a great first speaker. What a way to get this day going. And it's interesting is that the Reverend went ahead and made a comment that so many people, have to realize that everything you do in life is a choice. And your choice today was to take time out of your busy schedule to become a better man. And Chris stole a little bit of my thunder because one of the things that I talk about is that when an individual is given an opportunity to have an education, one of the things is that we can get the degrees, we can get the jobs, but no one has ever taken the time to share with each and every one of you, now that I'm working, what should I do with this money? And what do most people do? They start spending it and spending it and spending it. So today I'm going to introduce you to some of the concepts of retirement planning. And as I was here this morning, it was fun to be able to look out to the audience and see we've got all different age groups. I was thinking that there were going to be a lot of old people like myself here. And no matter what age you're at, it's important to identify what you have to work with is going to help you in your future. And to become a better man, what happens is that people go ahead and they are stressed bound because of finances. And what we try to do is to take what we do and educate them. It doesn't take a lot of money to make a lot of money. It just takes the perseverance, the tenacity, and to set a goal. And that goal of retirement is like a roadmap. So when a person starts to go ahead and to get on a vacation or go out on a trip, one of the things is that you figure, how do I get there? Well, nowadays it's pretty easy. You just ask Siri, say, Siri, I need to go here, and he will go ahead or she will go ahead, whichever gender you have on your phone, and it'll take you to where you're going. But when you actually look at financial planning, you've got to start somewhere. There's different basics that you have to look at. So there's your starting point. You have to have basic questions that you're going to look at, saying, well, what do I want out of retirement? When do I want to retire? When I retire, what do I want to do? Everyone has a different objective. I have, in just the last week, I had some clients come in that in the last year, they went on 4 cruises. That's what they like to do. The next day, I had a client that comes in, and she went ahead and she says, all I do is I just love to sit at home on my couch and watch the old classic TV shows. So everyone has a different outlook on financial planning and what they want to do. So also then you've got to crunch numbers. We're taught in this great country, the education of how to, make the money, but what does it take to actually build that money for you and for your family? Then there's tax advantage vehicles. Anytime you're working on retirement planning, it's extremely important to make sure that you're using the tools that are going to save you taxes, and we're going to go over some of those issues here in a little bit. Then we're going to talk about annuities. There are some people out there that just hate annuities. There's a TV guy on all the time, Ken Fisher. He says, I would rather die and go to hell before I would sell an annuity. Well, obviously, he doesn't know what they're all about because he's not taking the time to learn about them. Investment considerations, what's your risk tolerance? How much can you put away? What do you need to put away? And then you've got to look at your various risk temperaments. And I was talking to a person just last night that in his company's 401k, this guy's in his mid-30s, and in his 401k, he's got half of it in a money market account. Anybody here have money market accounts? How are they doing for you? We'll talk about that in a little bit too. So when you look at these, you want to start to implement the plan and start working towards your objective of reaching your retirement. Now, one of the things, too, is what I like to point out is that if you've read my bio, some of you in here know, I used to fly C141 Starlifters with the Air Force as a flight engineer. And I was always amazed to know that 99% of our time, our airplane was off course, off altitude, and off speed. But the inertial navigation system and the autopilot was constantly making minute adjustments. And that's what you have to do with your retirement planning, is to realize that you're going to make a wrong turn, but you need to get back on course. And we'll talk about those issues in a bit too. Now, one of the things that I like to point out, and especially because we have young folks in here and we've got people my age in here, it takes a look at if you started investing a $3,000 annual investment. Now, right now, if you fund in an IRA, if you're below 50 years old, you can put in $5,500 a year. If you're over 50, you can put in $65,000. But this shows, and I love showing this to younger people. And I talk to a lot of younger people. A lot of my adult clients bring their kids in because corporations nowadays are trying to get out of the retirement business. Some of you in here may be blessed and fortunate enough to work with the company that when you leave, they give you hundreds of thousands of dollars to say goodbye. Others, the onus is going to be on your back. This shows an example. If you started investing $3,000 and just got a 6% a year return, by the way, since 1872, the stock market has averaged 10.5. Doesn't feel that way in the last 16 years, and in the last 2 months, it's been quite a ride again. But you have to get over that, and you have to look at your retirement as a long-term process. So if you started at age 20, you can see here that by the time you're 65 years old, you've got $679,000. But what if you procrastinated and you waited until you were 35 years old to start? You have 254. And then if you waited just 10 more years, you've only got 120,000. That's called the miracle of compounding interest. And it doesn't take a lot to understand the concept. Has anyone here ever heard of the rule of 72? Okay, oh wow, a lot of hands, very good. So the rule of 72, what that means is if you take the interest rate that you're getting, if you get 6% on your money, it's going to take 12 years for your monies to double. In years like back in the go-go 90s, when the stock market for the last 5 years of the 90s averaged over 20%, it didn't take long at all for you to double your money. And for me, that was the greatest time of my life. It's like I could throw darts at the doggone mutual fund page, and all my clients are going to do well. Then reality set in with the technology bubble that burst in 2000, 2001, 2002, and then we had to experience it again in 2008 to March 9th of 2009 when we saw another 49% drop, during the year. But those are the things you have to identify, and don't panic. When do people lose money? When you sell it. And when do you make money? When you sell it. So I tell everybody that comes to my office, why do you want to walk around with one of these on your head when you've got the opportunity? Everything you do in life is a choice. Why would you choose to sell out in a down market? And money is emotional. And I had people back in 2002 that were saying, at the rate I'm losing my money, I'll be out of money in the next 2 or 3 years. I had 2 people, not clients, because a client would follow the advice. I had 2 people that went ahead and they bailed out in February of 09. The market bottom, the abyss actually happened on March 9th of 09. And if they would have stayed in, their monies would be up 270% from the time that they got out. But you know what? They got out, and I actually fired them as clients because I told them, I said, you don't follow my advice, I'm not your advisor, so I don't even want to have my name on your accounts when you did that. Also, there's basic considerations you have to look at. What kind of retirement do you want? When do you want to retire, and how long will retirement last? I work with a lot of retirees from major corporations. When they come in, they have their pension distribution, they have their 401k, then they have other IRAs that they want us to look at. And what I tell them is that you don't know what your expiration date's going to be. The good Lord knows when you're going to be gone, but you don't. So when people come in, they say, well, Gary, I've got this $300,000. How much money can I take out each year? So I ask them, well, tell me when you're going to die. If you're going to die next year, spend half of it this year and the rest of it next year. But none of us know. So you got to plan, and you'll see in a little bit here too, that one of the most important things on your financial plan is that every year you need to be meeting with your financial advisor, and he or she should be taking your current numbers and just take a look at the government, statistics when it comes down to longevity. And the nicest thing is for me to be able to tell my clients when they come in for their updates, please spend more money. And the market's treated us good in the last, 18 months, as we all know, even with the downturn we're having right now. So the considerations you might want to look at is, do you want to be financially independent? Do you want to go ahead and have unlimited resources to do the traveling that you want? One of the things, too, is nice is that if you're doing good, your tidings could be a lot more, too. And a lot of people are very philanthropic when it comes down in their wills and trusts to give to their churches and charities. And that's a nice position to be in when you've been able to make it. And then also, you want to be able to help your children, and in many cases, your parents. People my age, my mom and dad died 10 years ago, but the thing is we're called the sandwich generation. Not only are we having to worry about our kids, and I won't ask for a show of hands, but there's a chance that some of you have adult children still living in your house. And then maybe your parents are now in a long-term care facility, and the onus is on your back to go ahead and to be taking care of those different entities there. The Social Security, A lot of times when you look at Social Security, you got to figure out, are you going to take it at 62? Are you going to take it at FRA, full retirement age? And the full retirement age right now is between 65 and 60, between 66 and 67 years old. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too, because if you're doing well financially with your own investments, I recommend to my clients you want to go ahead and you want to wait to take your Social Security to 70 years old. Anyone in here right now waiting to 70 years old to take your money? Okay, very good. That's great. When I hit 66 3 years ago, I went ahead and I filed for my benefits. I immediately suspended them. My Social Security benefits are going from around $2,500 a month to 70 years old, where I'm going to get around $3,600 a month. That's a big difference. And Social Security is for life. Now, what's the drawback on doing something like that? What if I die at 69 years old? Well, if I die at 69 years old, my wife, Lori, is going to get the value, which would be 8% times 3 years. She'd get 124% of the benefit that she would have got, if I would have died at 69. It benefits her. So it's a win-win situation. I don't know if it's a win that I'm gone. You'd have to ask her that. So, okay. And then Medicare. This is one thing, too. If a person decides to retire early right now, you're going to be on the hook. Many times people are working until they're 65 just so that they know they're not going to have to pay the tremendous expense of, your long-term care, or not long-term, but just your medical insurance. So this is showing here that we're living in a time now where people are actually living longer. And I wrote down a statistic here, if I can find it, that the life expectancy of individuals has been increasing. And so let's see if I can find it here. Well, I'll come across it. But it's showing here at 65 years old, you can expect to live about another 19.4 years. That's just the government statistic. And a lot of us know, too, that men are supposed to check out about 6-7 years before the ladies do. So and that's what my wife and I are talking about. They're 7 years different. So I tell her, I says that if statistically works, then you're going to be alone for 14 years. But my son Greg's here. Greg, would you stand up a second? He's my succession plan. So if I say anything negative about my lovely wife, it's going to get back to me, through him. And they talk about the life expectancy increasing. I think I looked up the number was in 1960, the average male was supposed to live for about 26 more, or till 66. They were going to live to 76 years old, and now it's up to 81 years old. So longevity is increasing because of the modern technologies and the medicines and stuff that we have to work with. Crunching the numbers, this is very important. And one of the things, too, is that with your financial planner, he or she should have access to some really good calculators, which will give you an idea. How much do you need to save when you get to retirement? What's a reasonable amount of money you could take out, and how long would that money last for you? The guideline that we use a lot, I always, on the calculator that I use, it says that when you retire, if you're making $3,000 a month right now, then you should be able to go ahead and live on 75% because you don't have the portal expenses, the lunches. You may be able to get rid of a car, which will save you gas and insurance. So there's other variables that go into factor. When you retire, it should cost you a little bit less to live. Now, I'm hoping that by the time you get to that age that you're going to have more monies, that you're going to be able to spend more than you were making when you were actually working. You can think about your various expenses. We talked about those. The biggest ones right now is continuing the mortgages. And I tell a lot of folks, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful to get to the last few years of your working career and your house is paid off? And there's probably people in this auditorium today that are in a position where they know that their mortgage is going to be out of the way, and that frees up a bunch of money right there for you. And the nice thing, too, is like I talked about with your Social Security, if you have that opportunity to have a large enough retirement plan, live off of it until you're 70 years old. Now, why would you not want to take Social Security, at 70? I always ask the longevity of the family. If mom and dad died in their 60s or their early 70s, I tell them, take it at 66 because you don't have good genes. And so the thing is that, but if you've got mom and dad that are making it into their 80s or 90s, you want to go ahead and to, postpone Social Security because it's a significant difference. Anyone ever log into SSA.gov? Very good. And you can actually look there, and it's got your history, and it'll show you what you get, at 62, what you could get at full retirement age, and then again, what you get at 70. Most people I talk to never paid attention to the one that says 70. But that is very important. And if you're doing right in your financial planning, then you would want to go ahead and to understand that I'm going to live off of my monies first before I use Social Security. And a lot of financial planners won't tell you that. Because the way most financial planners are being paid today, we get fees, we get trail commissions off of different investments. That usually runs between 1/4 of 1% to 1% a year. So when I tell our clients to go ahead and to spend out of the accounts with us, I've just shot myself in the foot because I'm having them take money out of the accounts. But I also believe in the old cliche that says what comes around goes around. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And the nice thing is that when they make it to 70, and if they're getting $3,000 a month from Social Security, now they can reduce the monthly income they're taking from us, and they can go ahead, and if they wanted to start being philanthropic to their own children, now you can give away $18,000 a year, as a gift to the kids without having to pay a gift tax. And by the way, a lot of folks in here, you might be thinking, oh, yeah, I can give money to my kids. It's not tax deductible. It's going to the children. If you want to give monies to the church, that's tax deductible. But a lot of folks think that when they start giving away monies, it's tax deductible. I say, no. And it's not even taxable to the kids. But what it does do is if you have a large enough estate, it's going to save some monies on estate taxes. But I have very few clients in here. I have very few clients, period, that have estates of over $11.5 million, because that's what it takes with a married couple with an AB living trust before estate taxes come into factor, which is a lot of money. Okay, the three-legged stool that we're looking here, Social Security, traditional employment, employer pensions, and then also individual savings. The one in the middle is the one that is becoming a dinosaur. Very few corporations nowadays want to do your retirement planning for you, so the onus is on your back. And the earlier you learn about it, the more you're going to have, in the long run. This is showing here that if you were born in 1957, which is the year my wife was born, the Social Security would give you approximately $24,000 a year if you took it at full retirement age, which is 66 years and 6 months. For those individuals in 1957. Crunching the numbers, you can come up with an idea saying, okay, I'm going to need a certain amount of money. So this is showing that if you could identify that when you're retired, you need $50,000 a year to live off. If you're going to get income, from your retirements, then you're going to have, $20,000. So the gap is going to be that you have to figure out where the extra $30,000 is going to come from. So it's important for you to get a good grasp early in life. What do you think you're going to need when you decide to pull the plug and retire? This is an example here that is actually showing if a person was to say, okay, I'm going to need, a certain amount of monies. In this case here, it was the $30,000. And if their life expectancy was 25 years, you put the numbers in the calculator and it says you need to save $384,000 in order to have $30,000 the last 25 years. Now, I share with a lot of my clients when they come into the office, I say, I would love that the day before I die, I write a check for $10,000 and the check bounces and it was payable to the IRS. What a great way to go, huh? This is another important factor. A lot of folks here, and when folks come in and they have, like the gentleman that had the monies inside a money market account, most money market accounts right now, if you're lucky, you're probably not even getting 1% in a money market account. Maybe if you lock it up for a period of time in a CD, you might get it. Anybody know what inflation rate is right now for this year? 2.2%. So if you have your money in the bank and they pay you 1%, congratulations, you just lost 1.2% on your money by having it protected by the FDIC. And you know what the FDIC stands for? Foolish, dumb, innocent consumer. What, Greg? Don't say it. But a lot of people, they want that safety, and they don't care. They just want the protection of their money. So it is, for some people, it's a safe place. And that's one of the things you have to look at is what is your risk tolerance. But this is showing here that if you had $395,000, if you save $5,000 a year for the next 20 years, it would end up growing to $395,000. But a lot of people don't realize what inflation is going to do. Now, I graduated from Pomona High in 1967. In 1967, you could buy a Corvette Stingray 435 horse tri-power 427 engine for around $5,500. Anybody in here watch that show called Strange Inheritance? Nobody? Oh, okay. Did you see the one about the Corvette? The guy was a Vietnam veteran, took all of his combat pay, and when he got back from Vietnam, he bought a Corvette brand new. The Corvette recently was sold at auction, at Barrett Jackson's for something like $230,000, $240,000. So that's inflation. Your tax advantage, one of the things a lot of people don't understand how tax advantage investments work. Anything you're doing in a 401k, 403b, 457 plan, all that's growing for you tax deferred. It's not tax free, it's tax deferred. And I cannot believe how many times people come in and they think that when they die that their kids are going to get their pensions, their IRAs tax free. And I say, no. They're going to have to pay taxes on it. And there's all kinds of rules that have to do with the way the kids, when they inherit an IRA or a pension, and it's called a decedent IRA. And the nice thing about that is if you do proper planning, when you check out, what ends up happening is that your children can become the beneficial owner of Gary Charlebois IRA. Not mine, but I mean my son will. That's what happens if I die. Then our kids will be the beneficial owners of it. So our name stays on the account. Why would you want to have your children's name, as the beneficial owner? Because if they inherit it and put it in their IRA, it now falls under the 59.5 rule. If they take out any money out of that account, not only do they pay the ordinary income taxes on it, but there's a 10% federal penalty and a 2.5% Jerry Brown penalty on top of that. So I tell folks, if when the time comes, or if you want, bring the kids into the office. We all know, we have an expiration date. Bring the kids in, and we'll talk to them what's going to happen when your time in this earth is up. So that way, during a period of bereavement, you really don't want to worry about your monies. So take your kids into your financial planner's office and have them meet them and talk about what's going to happen to the accounts when they pass on. This here is showing the advantage of a tax-deferred investment. Now, a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to tie it up that many years. If you invested $10,000 30 years ago, it would grow then tax-deferred to $57,000. Now, had you invested in a taxable event, so anytime you have an investment that's not inside of a qualified plan, you probably are aware that you get a thing called a 1099 every year, and you have to pay capital gains on the dividends and on the see, that's what happens. I tell people I have Alzheimer's. On the dividends and on the capital gains. So you pay those taxes every year. So if you started with $100,000 and it did 10% in that first year, after you pay your taxes, you may have only had $8,000 left over. So the bottom line shows that after taxes, that $35,000 is what you'd have, on the original $10,000. Now, the line that's underneath the $57,000, that says, well, if you had a tax-deferred investment and you let that investment grow tax-deferred, it grew to $57,000. And then if all of a sudden you decided, I want it all right now, you pay all the taxes on it in the year that you take it out. So that still leaves you with $41,000. As you can see, that's almost $6,000 more because of having the tax-deferred growth. And a lot of people don't understand the advantages of tax-deferred investments. This is just showing here that what you can do with traditional IRAs right now, and it shows 2015, 2016, 2017. It hasn't changed, and by the way, for 2018, it's the same, that you can put in a maximum of $5,500 into a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, and then if you're over 50 years old, you can add an additional $1,000 on top of that. I'm just going to go through these. A lot of you understand these already. The biggest difference between traditional IRA and a Roth IRA is that when you hit 70 and a half years old, you have what's called an RMD. Some of you might be under RMDs, required minimum distribution, even if you don't want the money. The government forces you to take out money. Now, why do they do it? They say they want revenue. Well, what's revenue to you and I? Taxes. So I've got people that take out monies out of their IRAs, and they've been blessed and fortunate that they don't need it, but they have to take it out because the government wants to get some taxes on it. With a Roth IRA, you don't have to go ahead and take it under an RMD. Roth IRAs grow tax deferred, and then there's a parameter. You have to hold the Roth IRA for at least 5 years and achieve 59 and a half years old in order for the growth of it to be tax-free. I've had people that when they hit 59 and a half years old, if they brought a Roth 2 years earlier, they think they could take it all out tax-free. You have to have it there for the 5 years. Another thing that's really good about Roth IRAs is that for young people, and some of you in here may have children that they've got their first job and you want to help them out and understand the importance of getting started early, you could do a Roth IRA for the children. Why would you do it for a kid right now? Because chances are in their first job, they're not at a high tax bracket. Why do you want a tax-deductible IRA, which is a traditional, when you can do a Roth IRA? So you do the Roth, if let's say you do it for 10 years, it's got $55,000 in it, you can always take out the $55,000 without any taxes or penalties on it. You can always extract the contribution to the Roth IRA tax-free at any age. If you take out any of the growth, that's when it becomes taxable and possibly with a penalty if it's before 59 and a half years old. Okay. A lot of these slides here, I work in a very complex industry, and usually a first-time appointment with the client can be an hour and a half to 2 hours because we cover, such a plethora of information having to do with, financial planning. This is showing the 401k. There is a change for this year. That's showing that if you're over age 50, you had a $6,000 catch-up, so you could have put in $24,000 for the last 4 years. This year, they increased it by $500. So this year, if you're putting money in a 401k and you're over 50 years old, you can put in $24,500 into the 401k. And I'm going through these fast because thank you so much for having this clock down here. Do I talk a lot? I think I talk fast too, and I'm running out of time. So, okay. So that talks about there are contributions to a 401k. Some plans now have a Roth 401k, and that's something to talk about with your financial planner too. And the advantage is that you want to do the tax deductible type of plans in your earlier years when you're hopefully at a higher tax bracket. Then you could convert to a Roth IRA or 401k if you think you're still going to be a higher tax bracket, in years to come, because when you take it out, after age 59 and a half years old, that's going to be tax-free. The only time that you'd want to do the Roths early is if you're at a lower bracket and you're not saving any money by making the contributions to your 401ks or your IRAs. Annuities. We love annuities, and we deal with a lot of annuities. I mean, major companies, Prudential, Lincoln, Ohio National, Tac Life. And see, a lot of people don't understand that every single annuity has different nuances. And that's what I love about and I'm an independent advisor. I don't work for a company that tells me what to sell. So we're always doing due diligence on a plethora of different kinds of investments. And if somebody develops a better mousetrap, we want to know about it because our bottom line is the better you're doing in life, the better we're doing in life. Okay, risk considerations. We talked about inflation. The return needed to achieve your accumulation goal. And that's one of the things, any of your financial planners should have an HP 12C and be able to run numbers saying, here's how much you need to save right now in order to have this amount of money with reasonable returns. What's a reasonable rate of return? We like to say between 6 to 10%. Now, in the last year, last year we actually did a lot of clients were over 20% because it was such a good year. But that's not the norm. We tell everybody, look for 5 to 10 normal growth. And when you're accumulating money, you want to be a little bit more risky. Once you start taking the monies out, then you can curb back. And this is why it's nice sometimes to have guaranteed investments that'll give you a lifetime income that you can never outlive. Talking about insurance, it's important. My attitude on insurance, especially life insurance, you got to realize life insurance is death insurance because nobody gets paid until what happens? Until you die. So I try to explain to people that take a look at your different needs for insurance. It's a necessary evil. Buy it while you need it. When you no longer need it, get rid of it is my attitude on it. Then you want to implement your plan. You start as soon as you can. Many of you probably already have. Invest regularly through payroll deductions, a 401k, that's the best way to do it. As long as you don't have it in take-home pay, you're not going to spend it. And then review on a regular basis. Every year when the client comes in for their annual update, we take a look at where are their dollars now. And every year we live, we know we're a year closer to dying. So you want to find out, based on my current age and what I've got, what type of monthly income could I expect right now? All right. Questions? Yay! Okay. Oh, yes, sir. You know, when it comes down to numismatics, well, like right now, people are asking me, Gary, how much should I put in Bitcoin? And I tell them, as much as you can afford to lose. The nice thing about, silver and gold is the fact that if you like seeing that silver coin, if you like seeing that, that silver dollar, they're beautiful. But most of the time, if anybody has silver in here, where is it at right now? It's probably in your safe at home or it's in your safety deposit box. And the thing is everything that you deal with has risk. And ask the person that bought silver when the Hunt brothers were manipulated it decades ago and brought it up to $54 an ounce. How are those people doing? So I tell folks, you invest in things like that, very speculative things like that. And gold is speculative. How many times do you see a commercial on gold? If gold goes back to its original, its all-time prices, high prices, which was around $1,900 an ounce. Right now it's around $1,350 an ounce. I tell folks, if you want to buy gold or silver, buy yourself a new watch, buy your wife a beautiful necklace. So enjoy the aesthetic value of it besides the actual mineral value of it. So when people ask us about that, I say, you buy the silver that you want to buy. And I don't sell it at all because of the fact that I work with retirees. And if I would have put people with a 20% position in silver, when it was at $54 an ounce, they're not too happy right now. And I didn't do that. That's why if you like the gold, enjoy it, as a piece of jewelry or silver too. Other questions? Wow. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, the question is, do I recommend a will or a living trust? The thing is that you have to realize that people that get living trusts and stuff, they buy a living trust thinking that they're going to save taxes on it. Unless you've got that estate as a single person over $5.5 million or $11 million for a married couple, a trust is not necessary, except, this is the big exception. A lot of you have adult children in here right now, correct? If you have equity in your house or other properties or other investments that are outside of qualified money, which is a 401k, 403b IRA, and you do not have the outside investments under a TOD or a transfer on death account, then what happens is that if you have a house right now in Laverne and if it's worth $500,000 and it's paid for, what's going to happen is that you're going to be paying what's called probate fees. And those probate fees, from what I understand, is between 3 to 4%. So if you've got a $500,000 house, then your estate, and remember, please, when you're gone and your will or your trust goes into effect, what ends up happening is that your problems are over. But if you want your children to have an extra $15,000 or $20,000, a living trust right now should run you somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500, depending on if it's an AB trust or a simple trust. That $1,000, when your kids ask you this coming Christmas, Mom, Dad, what do you want for Christmas? Say, a living trust, a living, and why? Because who's it going to benefit? It's going to benefit them. And you can just tell them, and if you got 2 kids, $500 each, they buy the trust, and it just saved them possibly $15,000 to $20,000 of their estate. And it's going to be tied up in probate from usually between 9 months to a year. So and I hope that you understand. A trust doesn't save any taxes unless you are extremely well off to have a very large estate. I don't have a client in that category that they have to worry about that. So, good question now. Anything else? Oh, yes. Yes, sir. Okay, the question is, if you're approaching retirement age and you're going to have to draw out more monies than what the interest is coming out of a money market, then that's where there are investment vehicles out there. Annuities is a perfect example, and a lot of you in here have probably heard of Prudential. Right now, they offer an annuity that guarantees you 5% a year for the rest of your life, even if the contract goes to zero. So, and 5% versus a money market is 500% greater. So that's a good place to put it. Now, do you put it all there? No, because when you buy an annuity, a lot of times the annuity will have a 6 or 7 year surrender charge. A surrender charge is not a penalty. What a surrender charge does is it says that if you buy a contract, the broker is going to get paid a commission. Usually for Prudential, it's like 3.5%. What ends up happening, though, is that if you don't stay in it for at least that 6 or 7 years that you agreed to in the first place, then you're going to pay an exit charge to get out of it because you paid nothing to get into it. So it reimburses the fact that they paid us and it paid them to initiate the contract. So anytime that we put a client into a contract, we want to make sure that they're going to be able to keep it for that surrender period of time. But there's a lot of great products out there. And I bought a Pac Life policy years ago, put in 103. By March 9th of 09, it was worth $48,000. When it was worth $48,000, my living benefit on it was $115,000. And I was guaranteed 5% a year for 20 years on $115,000. And if it never would have come back up, good news, it did come back up again, but I was guaranteed that living benefit. Okay, yes, sir. Okay, the question is, if you don't have a lot to invest, is it better to do a 401k or a Roth? I would think if you don't have a lot right now, because life is precarious. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring us. So if you did a Roth IRA, the good news is if you could do the $500 into it, and 2 years from when you needed the money, you've got $11,000 that you can tap into. I would hope that you wouldn't have to, but it's a nice little place to know, wow, if something really happens and I got to get some money out, at least you can get the $11,000. And that's if it's worth 11, which hopefully it would be higher than that. Final question? See none? Okay, thank you so much. All right. Thanks.
One more? One more question.
Is there one more question back there? Yes. He brings up a point about matching. In many companies nowadays, generous companies will actually match like 50 cents on the dollar on your first 6%. In that case, you always want to put in at least the matching amount. If they match 50 cents on the dollar and the next year your investments go up 0, you just made 50% return because of the company match. Very good point. Very good point.
Okay, so just a couple more minutes and then we'll take a little break. He's going to be available during our break. We're going to take a 15-minute break. He and his son will give away free financial planning advice for the next 15 minutes. But I do have one more question, or a couple questions for you. A talk like this can be very overwhelming, and based on where we are, I'm sure you latched in on certain points of what he said. How many of you are in your 20s and 30s? 20s and 30s? Okay, so we started out this session by talking about $3,000 a year that you can invest. That's $250 a month, and hopefully we can do more, but if that's the starting point, if you could get that onto a auto deduction from your bank account and almost forget about it, you just started a self-sustaining process. How do they start that? Do they talk to you? If they say, okay, I'm going to do it today, how do they do that?
Yeah, and there's simple ways of doing it, and like that $250 a month. There are mutual fund companies, like you've probably heard of Fidelity before, for as little as, Greg, is it $25 or $50 a month? $50, you can do a systematic investment plan into a plan with Fidelity. Very simple to do. And the nice thing is that if you do it through a direct deposit, it's called an SIP, Systematic Investment Plan. when you sit down with the financial planner, he or she should be able to fill out a form that'll say that I want to have out of my checking account. If you get paid on the 5th, then on the 10th, you have that $250 automatically put into the account. And you use $250. What we like to do is you take the contribution of $5,500 since you're in your 20s, then that I think ends up being, was it 160? No, I'm trying to see, there it goes, Alzheimer's again. But if you would just divide 12 into the 5,500, and that'll give you the maximum contribution you can. What? Okay. 460.
So planning for the future can be very overwhelming. If we're drowning in debt, if we're overwhelmed, if we can barely make ends meet, and we feel like, gosh, how do I even think about that in light of where I am today? Just want to remind you of a resource that you probably heard of. Here at Grace Church, we're big Dave Ramsey fans in the sense that we like his Financial Peace University. He wrote a book called The Total Money Makeover. The Total Money Makeover talks about getting out of debt, creating a budget, establishing an emergency fund. He doesn't get into this depth of financial planning, but that would be a starting point. So if you're sitting here thinking, God, I don't even know how to think about that because we're drowning, please pick up that book as a resource. But can you recommend a resource to us if we're at the point of saying, okay, I've got to get this started. Maybe I'm a little behind the curve on investing. Is there a book that you recommend or
there's
a
been
top
a book
resource?
For years, but I hate to use that term. It's called Financial Planning for Dummies. And they make a plethora of different kind of books like that. But the thing is that there's so much information out there. If you just do a Google search, long-term retirement planning, you'll be amazed how much information there is out there. Now, when Chris just said a second ago about being in debt, anyone here participating in what's called a HELOC? Home Equity Line of Credit? Okay, now see, HELOCs, if you find yourself in a position where you have a lot of debt, in the old days was just last year, you could take monies out of a HELOC and actually use that to pay down your debt because consumer debt is not tax deductible. But if you had the HELOC for years, you could use it. Nowadays, the HELOC can only be used, though, for home improvement. But that was always a great way to tap into monies. Sometimes, if you got to realize if you're paying 16 to 21% consumer debt, what ends up happening? That's not tax deductible. A lot of you in here have the opportunity to borrow from your 401k. We hate to see people do that, but the thing is if you borrow the money, pay off the debt. But please, when you pay off your debt, don't bring it back up again. You got to pay it off and leave it paid off. But then what happens is when you borrow money from your 401k, you're actually paying yourself interest, and usually it's 4 to 5% that you're able to pay yourself. Now, your investments might be doing 10, but at least you've got that, that consumer debt out from under your belt.
Good stuff. Gary, this is brilliant. Thank you so much. Can we thank him?
Thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff.
Thank you.